Her heart raced as she stumbled through the dense forest, the sound of pursuit echoing in her ears. Branches tore at her clothes and leaves crunched under her feet as she pushed herself to go faster, desperation lending her strength. She knew she was running out of time, running out of options. A sharp pain shot through her side, causing her to stumble and fall to the ground. She gritted her teeth, the metallic taste of blood filling her mouth. She knew she couldn't give up now, not when she had come so far. Pushing herself up, she continued running, the adrenaline pumping through her veins, fueling her determination. As she burst out of the forest into a clearing, she saw a figure looming ahead. Panic gripped her as she recognized the face of her nemesis, the one who had brought chaos and destruction into her once peaceful life. But she couldn't let fear consume her. She squared her shoulders, her eyes locking with his in a silent challenge. "You can't run forever," he taunted, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he advanced towards her. But she refused to back down. She had endured too much, fought too hard to let him win now. With a deep breath, she steadied herself and prepared to fight, both physically and mentally. The stakes were high, the battle ahead unforgiving, but she knew that she had the strength within her to face whatever came her way. And as she prepared to confront her enemy head-on, a fire ignited in her eyes, a fire fueled by determination, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. As Amelia stood in the pouring rain outside the charming little cafe, her heart pounded fiercely against her chest. She had been avoiding this moment for years, afraid of what might come to light if she dared to face it. But today was different. Today, she was ready to confront her past. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the creaky wooden door and stepped inside. The cozy interior greeted her with the scent of freshly ground coffee and the soft murmur of chatter. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on a familiar face, the face she had spent countless nights dreaming about. He looked up from his book, his eyes meeting hers in a collision of emotions. A flicker of surprise crossed his features before a warm smile spread across his face, causing her heart to flutter uncontrollably. Time seemed to stand still as they stared at each other, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. Amelia approached his table slowly, each step feeling like a mile-long journey. The sound of her heartbeats drowned out the surrounding noise, her breath shallow and uneven. As she reached him, she finally found her voice, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I never thought I'd see you again," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled softly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Funny how life works, isn't it? Fate has a way of bringing people back together when they least expect it." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes, threatening to spill over. She reached out a trembling hand towards him, the urge to touch him overwhelming. "I never stopped thinking about you, about us. The way things ended, I never got closure." His gaze softened, filled with remorse and longing. "I know, Amelia. I made a mistake, a big one. I should have fought for us, for what we had." A single tear rolled down her cheek, a mixture of pain and relief washing over her. "It's not too late, you know. We can still make things right, find our way back to each other." He took her hand in his, warmth seeping into her cold fingertips. "I want that more than anything, Amelia. I never stopped loving you." And in that moment, as the rain pelted against the windows and the world faded away around them, they found solace in each other's arms. The past may have been filled with regret and heartache, but the future held the promise of a love worth fighting for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the meadow, Sarah felt her heart race with anticipation. She had been training for this moment for months, pushing her body to its limits in preparation for the upcoming competition. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and nerves as the other competitors gathered around the arena, their eyes filled with determination. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself in the midst of the chaos around her. She could hear the crowd murmuring in the stands, their voices blending into a dull roar that only added to the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The moment she had been waiting for was finally here, and she was ready to give it her all. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, introducing the first competitor of the evening. Sarah's heart pounded louder in her chest as she stepped into the arena, the soft earth beneath her boots giving her a sense of grounding. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, their anticipation palpable in the air. As the music swelled and the first notes of her routine began to play, Sarah felt a surge of energy coursing through her body. Every move she made was precise and calculated, a reflection of the countless hours of practice she had put in. She leaped and twirled with grace and power, her body moving in perfect synchrony with the music. But as she reached the crescendo of her routine, disaster struck. A misstep sent her tumbling to the ground, the wind knocked out of her lungs as she hit the earth hard. The crowd gasped in unison, the sudden silence ringing in Sarah's ears as she struggled to regain her composure. Pain shot through her ankle as she tried to stand, her face contorted in agony. But through the haze of pain and disappointment, Sarah found a deep well of determination within her. With gritted teeth and tears in her eyes, she rose to her feet once more, ready to finish what she had started. Ignoring the pain screaming through her body, Sarah continued her routine with a fierce intensity that left the crowd in awe. Every movement was laced with raw emotion, a testament to her strength and resilience in the face of adversity. As the final notes of the music faded away, Sarah collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, their cheers deafening in the arena. Despite the setback, Sarah had given the performance of a lifetime, proving to herself and the world that she was a force to be reckoned with. As the storm raged on outside, Emma found herself pacing back and forth in the old cabin, her heart racing with anxiety. She could hear the wind howling and the rain pounding against the windows, drowning out any other sound. The power had been out for hours, leaving her in complete darkness except for the flickering candle on the table. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. What if he didn't make it back in time? What if something had happened to him out there in the storm? She tried to push away the negative thoughts, but they clawed at her, threatening to consume her. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door broke through her spiraling thoughts. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she rushed to open it, relief flooding through her when she saw him standing on the other side, drenched and battered but alive. Without a word, she pulled him inside, wrapping him in a blanket and holding him close, tears of relief streaming down her face. He was shaken but unharmed, and as he recounted his journey through the storm, Emma marveled at his strength and resilience. She had never been more grateful to have him by her side, his presence a beacon of light in the darkest of times. As they sat by the fireplace, the storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cabin, a sense of peace settled over them. They were together, facing the storm as a team, and Emma knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would weather them together. The crackling of the fire and the soft sound of rain on the roof filled the cabin, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety around them. And in that moment, Emma knew that their love was stronger than any storm, a force that could withstand anything that life threw their way. As the rain poured relentlessly outside, Emily sat by the window, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had been through so much in the past few months: loss, betrayal, heartbreak, but at this moment, it seemed like everything had come crashing down on her all at once. She clutched the letter in her hand, the words penned by her late grandmother still fresh in her mind. "Follow your heart, my dear. Even in the darkest of moments, never lose faith in yourself and the path you're meant to walk." The words resonated deep within her, giving her a glimmer of hope in the midst of her despair. With a deep breath, Emily made a decision. She would not let her pain define her. She would rise above it, stronger and more determined than ever before. Wiping away her tears, she stood up and walked to her desk, picking up a pen. Her hand trembled as she began to write. Words poured out of her, pouring her soul onto the pages. It was a letter to herself, to the world, to anyone who needed to hear her story. She bared her heart, her struggles, her dreams, and her fears, and as she wrote, a sense of peace washed over her, like a warm embrace in the coldest of nights. When she finally finished, Emily read the letter one last time, feeling a sense of release wash over her. Folding it gently, she placed it in an envelope, sealing it with a kiss. This letter was not just a catharsis, but a declaration of her resilience and her will to keep moving forward. With a determined glint in her eyes, Emily reached for her coat and umbrella, ready to face the storm outside. The rain no longer felt like a burden, but a cleansing shower, washing away the pain and preparing her for the new journey ahead. As she stepped out into the downpour, a rainbow appeared in the sky, a brilliant arc of colors cutting through the darkness. Emily smiled through her tears, knowing that even in the midst of chaos, there was beauty and hope waiting to be discovered. And with each step she took, she embraced the unknown, ready to carve out her own path in the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the rolling hills, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart pounding in her chest. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. She clutched the crumpled letter in her hand, the words that had shattered her world still fresh in her mind. "I can't do this anymore," the letter had read, the ink smudged from tear stains. "I'm sorry." The betrayal cut deep, leaving her feeling hollow and lost. How could he leave her like this, with no explanation, no closure? She raised her eyes to the sky, watching as the first stars began to twinkle into view. But then, in the distance, a figure appeared on the horizon, a tall silhouette against the fading light, walking purposefully towards her. Sarah's heart leaped in her chest, a mix of hope and fear swirling inside her. As the figure drew closer, she could make out his face, his familiar features etched with a mix of guilt and longing. It was him. Her heart raced as he finally stood before her, his eyes searching hers for forgiveness. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. "I made a mistake. I was a fool to let you go." Sarah felt a wave of emotions crashing over her, anger, sorrow, but also a glimmer of something she thought was lost forever, love. She looked into his eyes, seeing the raw vulnerability there, and knew that despite the pain he had caused, she couldn't deny the love she still felt for him. In that moment, as the world around them faded into darkness, Sarah made a choice. She reached out her hand, a silent invitation for him to stay, to try to mend the shattered pieces of their relationship. The wind stilled, the night settling around them like a comforting embrace. And as they stood on the cliff, facing the uncertainty of the future together, Sarah knew that their love story was far from over. As the rain poured down relentlessly, Sarah's heart pounded with fear and anticipation. She stood outside the abandoned mansion, the same place where her nightmares had begun. The wind howled mournfully, echoing the dread in her soul. With trembling hands, she pushed the creaking door open and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the shadows danced ominously on the walls. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she remembered the chilling whispers that haunted her dreams. Memories flooded back, overwhelming her senses. She followed the sound of a faint melody drifting through the halls, a melody she remembered from her childhood. Each step she took brought her closer to the truth she had been seeking for so long, the truth about her past, about the darkness that had consumed her family. As she reached the grand ballroom, her eyes widened in shock. Standing before her was a figure from her past, a ghost she had long tried to forget, the ghost of her father who had disappeared without a trace years ago. His eyes, once filled with love, now bore a haunting emptiness. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she struggled to comprehend what was happening. Her father's ethereal voice filled the room, recounting the events that led to his mysterious disappearance. The secrets he had buried deep within the walls of the mansion were finally coming to light. With a trembling hand, Sarah reached out to touch her father, to feel the connection she had longed for. But as her fingers brushed his icy skin, he began to fade away, his form dissipating like mist in the wind. A sense of loss washed over her, mingled with a newfound understanding. As the last echoes of her father's voice faded away, Sarah was left alone in the silent ballroom, the weight of the past lifting off her shoulders. She knew now that the answers she sought lay not in the shadows of the mansion, but in the depths of her own heart. And with that realization, she made a vow to break free from the ghosts of her past and embrace the light of a new beginning. As the rain poured down in a torrential downpour, Sarah found herself standing at the edge of a cliff, staring out at the raging sea below. The wind whipped fiercely around her, almost as if trying to push her over the edge. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the raindrops as she struggled to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions raging inside her. How had it come to this? How had her once perfect life spiraled so completely out of control? Her heart ached with the weight of everything that had happened: the betrayal, the loss, the shattered dreams. She had given everything she had, only to be left empty and broken. But she refused to give up. Despite the storm raging around her, she found a glimmer of strength deep within her. She was not a victim of her circumstances. She was a warrior, a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. With a steely resolve, she wiped away her tears and took a step back from the edge. She wouldn't let the darkness consume her. She wouldn't let the pain define her. As she turned away from the cliff and started to walk back towards solid ground, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. In that moment, she felt a surge of power and determination coursing through her veins. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that the journey to healing would be long and fraught with challenges. But she also knew that she was strong enough to face whatever came her way. With her head held high and her spirit unbroken, Sarah walked away from the edge of the cliff, ready to face whatever lay ahead, with courage, resilience, and a fierce determination to reclaim her life. As the storm raged outside, Sarah paced back and forth in the small cabin, her heart heavy with worry. The letter from John had been a cruel reminder of everything she had tried to forget. The memories flooded her mind, threatening to drown her in pain and regret. But amidst the chaos of her emotions, a flicker of determination ignited within her. She refused to let the past dictate her future. With trembling hands, she retrieved a dusty old box from the bottom of her closet. Inside, she found a stack of faded photographs and a worn journal, remnants of a life she had left behind. As she flipped through the pages of the journal, tears welled up in her eyes. The words penned by her younger self spoke of dreams and ambitions long buried under the weight of responsibility and heartache. But something stirred within her, a voice whispering that it was not too late to chase those dreams once more. The howling wind outside seemed to echo her inner turmoil, urging her to make a choice. With a deep breath, Sarah made up her mind. She would face her demons head-on and reclaim the life she had once envisioned for herself. With newfound resolve, she packed a small bag with essentials and made her way to the door. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but she stood tall, unflinching in the face of the storm. As she stepped outside, a flash of lightning illuminated the path ahead, guiding her towards a future filled with uncertainty but also infinite possibilities. The road stretched out before her, winding through the dark forest like a ribbon of hope. Sarah took a step forward, leaving behind the comfort of the familiar for the promise of something new. The storm continued to rage, but she walked on, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. And as the rain poured down in a torrential downpour, Sarah felt a sense of liberation wash over her. She was no longer bound by the chains of her past, but free to forge her own destiny. With each step she took, she left behind the pain and regret that had held her captive for so long. The storm would eventually pass, leaving behind a cleansed world ready for new beginnings. And Sarah, with her head held high and her spirit unbroken, would embrace the unknown with open arms. Tears streamed down her face as she stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping around her, threatening to push her over the edge. She could still hear his words echoing in her mind, the betrayal and deceit cutting deeper than any physical wound ever could. She had thought he was the one, the love of her life, her soulmate. But now she knew it was all a facade, a lie carefully constructed to deceive her. How could she have been so blind? So foolish to believe his sweet words and empty promises? The pain in her heart was unbearable, like a knife twisting in her chest with every beat. She felt like her whole world had come crashing down, leaving her stranded in a sea of sorrow and heartache. But as she stared into the abyss below, a tiny voice in her mind whispered, urging her to let go of the pain and the anger, to release herself from the chains of betrayal and move on. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and let herself fall forward, the rush of air and the deafening roar of the wind drowning out all other sounds. For a brief moment she felt weightless, like a bird soaring through the sky, free from the burdens of the past. And then she felt a sharp tug around her waist, pulling her back from the brink of oblivion. Gasping, she opened her eyes to see strong arms wrapped around her, pulling her to safety. It was him, the one who had caused her so much pain, the one she thought she could never forgive. And yet, in that moment, she saw the truth in his eyes, the unspoken apology that tugged at her heart. Without a word, she collapsed into his arms, her body racked with sobs as he held her close, whispering words of regret and love into her ear. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the world, she knew that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for them after all.